All right, welcome to the Pro Football Doc podcast. I know it's Pro Football Doc. We're going to talk about some other subjects today. I'm often excited to have special guests on, but today more so than typical. And I feel like this interviewer that I saw this week, I feel like I'm this person here. I'm so excited here.
It's so nice to meet you. Hi. Congratulations, the Cure Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2019. Are you as excited as I am?
By the sounds of it, no.
It's so nice to meet you.
So,
Hi.
John, you're probably not as excited as I am over this thing, but I'm excited to have you on. So let me properly introduce you. Dr. John Heffron. I know him as attending a professor during my residency, and know him very well. Great surgeon, great doctor. The rest of the world probably knows him as the Last Dance doctor, longtime Chicago Bulls head team physician during the Chicago Bulls Michael Jordan heyday. So in some ways, he's pro basketball doc, so to speak. So practicing at Northwestern University there. So let's welcome to the show, John Heffron. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Dave. Nice to be here.
No, I am thrilled here. Timing is great because we're in the middle of playoffs and lots of basketball related injuries and what have you. And I thought it'd be fun for people to hear from your perspective some of the things that were happening. So my first question to you is, Last Dance doc. Were you guys aware of the documentary at the time? Did you ever think it would be such a big splash like it did, that it made? I mean, or was it just, oh, we forgot about that and here we go?
Well, I figured it would make a big splash. When you record those, you never know how much the tape is going to be actually left on the cutting room floor and how much you'll be in it. So it was fun for me because I was on the second hour and a lot of people recognized me on there, and I got a lot of calls and things from people that I haven't seen in years said, "Oh, I saw you on that documentary." So it was a lot of fun, and I think it was well done, and it came out at a time when during the COVID crisis, so it was really the only sports show on TV. So I think everybody watched it.
Yeah. So you now have what do they call it? IDBM or IBDM, whatever credits, whatever, in terms of what's going on. So yeah. That's really pretty cool here that let's see. So Last Dance here, and if you really go to the credits, there you are, known for The Last Dance, which is pretty cool there. So you mentioned the cutting room floor. What did we miss? What shouldn't have been on the cutting room floor, either from your perspective related to medical or a perspective of what you're behind the scenes seeing it all? What are some of the things we missed from The Last Dance?
Well, I think overall it covered as much as it could, although it was a long documentary. I think one person it missed Johnny Bach, who was the one of our assistant coaches, who was a remarkable assistant coach and was well loved by everybody at the Bulls organization. And Johnny's passed away, and there wasn't anything about Johnny Bach in there. Of course, there were other stories that they couldn't put in about the behind the scenes stuff about Michael and being in the office with him and coming in and our various conversations. And one thing I think that was interesting in comparison to what we see now with the players and their agents and the involvement of a lot of other personnel other than the team doctor and the player or the patient, is that when Michael broke his foot and we started down that road, I was speaking to him in the office and I said to him, Michael, do you want to you want to talk to your agent about this, or, who else? Should we engage anybody else? And Michael says, listen, he says, Doc, it's just me and you here. He says, it's my foot. You're my doctor. He said, we don't have to talk to anybody else. This is us. So that was very refreshing. And you having been a team doctor, you know how complicated things can be when you get a lot of other people involved in the conversation.
Well, there's no question, and they're well-meaning people, but it's sort of like the aunt who's a dental hygienist that has to flex her muscle in the medical world, the agent that may or may not know, or the family member, whatever. And let me tell you, I've told this before. I can tell you the whole, for example, when I said the same thing to Philip Rivers about his ACL. Hey, who else do we need to talk to here? Your dad, your what? No, nobody, just me. And I've often, when players have come in to tell me, hey, my agent wants me to do this, and myself and our head athletic trainer would say, well, what do you want to do? Remember, your agent works for you. I mean, if you say, no, I want to follow his advice, okay, then let's follow his advice, but don't say my agent wants me to do this. What do you want to do? You're in charge of what's going on. So that's good. So what other, I mean, of course, I know you would never betray any confidences or HIPAA or anything like that, but any other good stories that you can tell us that were left on the cutting room floor related to The Last Dance? And we don't need even names or medical specifics or anything like that, just from your perspective, having been there and witnessed everything firsthand.
Well, I always had great respect for Michael. I mean, if you're traveling with him, as we did for the playoffs, it's really amazing at the amount of attention that we directed directly to him. And I always felt one of his character traits, which was very strong, is that he always accepted the fact that he was Michael Jordan, and he was different, and he had a different outlook on things than a lot of people did. But he never fought that. So he was always willing to accept all those things that went with that without really protesting very much about it. And I thought that was remarkable because, he was the focus of attention everywhere that he went. As an example, when Michael would come over and we'd have to go to the hospital for a test or something, it was very interesting. He knew all the back ways to get it. He knew the hospital better than I did. He knew all the back doors and the back alleys to get through the hospital without being recognized by anybody. And we would have interactions with people at various times. I remember once I took him one morning over he had to see one of our specialists for something or other. We walked into the office early in the morning. There was only one older woman there. This one, Michael was quite young. And so she stares at us and she says to him, are you a basketball player? And he says, yes. He's always very polite. Yes, ma'am, I'm a basketball player. He said, well, who do you play for? He said, I play for the Chicago Bulls. And she says, well, what's your name? He says, well, my name is Michael Jordan. And she says, oh, I've heard of you. So we'd have all those interactions like that, very personal with people. And he was always extremely polite with people. And he dealt well with people from all walks of life, from people on the street to people who were presidents of corporations. He was always very nice to them.
Yeah, I remember one time, obviously no specifics, you had him in the hospital and on the concierge floor for some privacy, and he was under an alias. It was the first time that I realized you could do that medically when I was a resident there, and you really needed to, right, because of all the attention that he garnered. All right, so if you could say, settle the great debate, food poisoning or not, that game.
Oh, no, I don't know that he had food poisoning. We thought he might have had altitude sickness.
All right, so
there we go. I had to punch the
yeah.
button. Yeah.
No No problem. So maybe that pizza place is exonerated.
Yeah, maybe, it may very well be, you know?
Interesting. All right. Look, we could talk about specific injuries, and there's a whole list of them right now, but I'm most curious about this, and I've come out and said it. I don't know if you saw it. In my experience, the great ones end up downplaying injury. Like, oh, I'm not hurt. They're almost like will themselves to be invincible. I'm always at 100%. I'm always better. Whether it's Tiger Woods with the red, shirt on Sunday, or Tom Brady with his thumb almost torn off and everything's fine. And Michael, to me, from pseudo close, but not as close as you, nowhere near, had that in him. What are your thoughts if you've heard that LeBron James, who's obviously great in his own right, has made a point of saying, including recently after his high ankle sprain, saying, I will never be back to 100%. And I get his point. It's like every day, every year, I'm a little older. And when you're injured, are you really? But what do you think about that? Am I correct in thinking that's different than what Michael would say? Even if he wasn't 100%, he would say, I'm 100%, I'm good to go. Whereas LeBron seems to take a different tact. And I'm not trying to be critical of one being right or wrong. It's more of a compare and contrast. What do you think about that?
I think Michael's attitude was different in that he always wanted that psychological edge. He never wanted the other team to know that he was hurting. So as an example, you would see sometimes he always wore some sort of a knee support or something, and maybe a forearm brace or something like that. If you look back on it, sometimes it would be on the left side, sometimes the right side, etc. So he never wanted to wear anything that would raise attention to the fact that he had something wrong with them. He had a fracture of his, he had a facial fracture once. And some of the players back then would wear those plastic masks, if you will, for that. He would absolutely not wear anything like that because he did not want to show the other team that he had an injury. Maybe they would target that injury or something like that. So his attitude was always to not let anyone know that there might be he might be under some issue medically. The other thing we always joked about is his dad and I would usually sit on the plane close to each other and talk. And I distinctly remember one day coming in, he said, well, how's Michael doing? I got on the plane. He said, well, he's sick. He's got the flu. He doesn't feel well. His dad would say, well, that's good because he'll probably get 45, and we did joke around that when he didn't feel well, he seemed to really play well for some reason. And I have no idea why, but he seemed to take it almost as a challenge. If something was bothering him, that he would use that to try to improve his performance.
Or Doc, you should have just taken credit that it was all your treatment and that you got it better.
Yeah.
So here are some of the basketball articles that we've done. But what you're saying is that my being a little bit shocked at LeBron James saying he would never be 100% on his ankle, that indeed is different than what other people or what Michael would do. Not saying one's better than the other, but it's a different tact. Michael would never, even if it were true, admit to something like that.
That's true. He would not admit that.
Gotcha.
We would talk about it. He would not want it out there publicly. Yeah.
Gotcha. What do you think? Here's the next thing that I want to ask you. And did you see the comments from Charles Barkley related to Anthony Davis there? I'll play him for you here.
Anthony Davis, I told you, the Lakers can't win this series. Forget about the championship. They can't win this series without street clothes.
You want to explain that?
I call him Anthony Street Clothes Davis because he's always in street clothes.
So I play that for you because the next game, obviously Barkley's a savage there, and I know you've got all sorts of experience and whatever over time with him, but he criticized the next game. Anthony Davis tried to play with that groin and left about 5-6 minutes into the game. And Barkley criticized the Lakers medical staff for letting him play. You have any take on that? I mean, I had a take, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I number one, as you know, these guys in football, as well as in basketball, but really in football, in basketball, they are extremely tough people physically, and they will generally play with a lot of injuries, which are minor to them, but would set down the average athlete for sure. And my philosophy was always that the players could play as long as their injury, they wouldn't do themselves any harm if they were going to perform and get hurt. So I don't know. I think Anthony Davis trying to play with a groin strain was not unreasonable. But those groin strains can really hurt. And you know, he tried, but he was unable to do so. I don't think the Lakers doctors felt he was at great risk for any permanent injury. So if he felt like he could perform, I think it's reasonable to let him go and make that call.
Well, I think your opinion and mine then are fairly similar. I thought it was a little unfair of Barkley to say that after the fact. The way I looked at it is it was an elimination game. The Lakers were going to lose if Anthony Davis didn't play and play well. And earlier in the series, when he went out, I figured he would indeed miss the rest of the series. And I thought that tipped the balance from Chris Paul's reemerging shoulder health versus Anthony Davis headed the other way with the groin into the Suns' favor. Because, you know, after Chris Paul got hurt, it was a 3-1 lead for the Lakers. Then Anthony Davis gets hurt, and then they lose 3 straight, and they're out. And that was a game 7. And you and I know, look, a groin strain, I'm sure they knew he wasn't 100%. They were like, let's see what we can get out of him. And he wanted to try. And he wasn't going to turn this into a surgery. And sure, he could hurt it more, but the season's over either way, and it's not going to leak into next season. So I didn't think the criticism was fair to say that about the Lakers doctors. And as you say, we're just the doctors. We don't make the final decision, right? The final decision needs to be between the medical, the player, and the team. It has to be, you know, everyone has to be in alignment to go. So tell me, what do you think about the Joel Embiid situation? Slight, small, lateral meniscus tear. Returned to play Sunday night, scored a lot of points. The Sixers did not win. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that's a clinical judgment because, as you know, you and I know as well. I mean, if MRI scans are these tears, if you will, on an MRI may or may not be of any significance. So I think that's a clinical evaluation, not just an MRI decision. And years ago, one of our team physicians did MRI scans on all his players. This is when MRIs first came out. He was doing them on every guy every year. There would be 12 guys. They were all abnormal. That 10 out of 12, 25-year-old, 27-year-old guys would have normal MRIs. So you and I know that you have to use the MRI as a tool, but you can't make that your determining factor. So,
well, I say all the time,
really well, and
yeah,
obviously, he didn't have a badly significant meniscus tear. He wouldn't have been able to play that well.
Yeah, and I always say a couple things to that. One is, I get a chuckle out of a team saying, we're getting an MRI and we'll let you know about the Achilles or the ACL. We already know, right? Just off of exam clinically. And the other thing I'd say is you're right about MRIs, and I'll add something else. I always say an MRI is like if you buy or sell a home, it's the home inspection report. Every home looks like they're about to fall down. Why? Because the home inspector doesn't ever want to get sued that he missed something, he or she missed something. And the same with the radiologist. They see Joel Embiid, they see a combine player, and every little possibility could be rule out becomes, and every little, especially as MRI scans go from 1.5 Tesla to 3 Tesla, and you're seeing subtle nuances. I think you do get that. So we hope Joel Embiid is fine there. So I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're working here. So the last time I actually saw you in person, I have to tell this story to others. I don't know if you remember, randomly at Deer Valley a couple years ago skiing, and you were up there and you were like, yeah, I'm there with my grandkids, etc. And you looked at me, and I had little kids with me. I said, yeah, those aren't my grandkids. Those are mine. I don't know if you remember that or
I
not.
do remember that. Absolutely. Yeah.
But in any case, what else have you been up to? Open-ended. What do you want to talk about? Anything as we close off here? Because I promised you 20 minutes and we're already there and a little bit past.
Well, I don't, I'd be glad to talk about plenty of Michael Jordan stories if you want to hear a couple. So
yes, I think that's what we're all here for. Yes.
Michael used to, when Michael broke his foot, he would come to the office, and of course he had a cast on, the old-fashioned cast, and he'd always bring his shoe. He'd always bring that shoe for that, hoping that was the day when he'd get off his cast. And so he'd come in with an extra shoe for his casted foot. And unfortunately for him, most of the time we'd send him off with a new cast on, and he'd leave his shoe behind. He'd autograph it for my secretary, who ended up with a whole bunch of Michael Jordan autographed. I can't remember his right foot or left foot, but she had a whole bunch of those autographed shoes hanging around.
Well, of course you would expect that from Michael, right? It's like influencing the referee, right?
Yeah.
If you act like you got fouled, maybe you get the call, kind of thing.
Exactly.
But as smart as Michael is, I'm surprised he didn't figure it out that he should have brought in the shoes and said, look, the fact that he kept autographing shoes was probably disincentive for the office staff, right?
That's true.
Those shoes were worth a lot of money there, etc. But
that's right. One time he was teasing my son, who was about 5 years old then. He maybe 6. He would tease him that his father wouldn't buy him those Michael Jordan shoes. He had these crummy old gym shoes made by somebody else. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I obviously I was in residency there in the time and liked to play a little basketball. And by the way, look, just so everybody knows, John Heffron is a pro basketball doc. Like I say pro football doc. Look, I had some experience with the Bulls through John as a junior assistant. I've had experience with the Timberwolves, but not as the main guy. So, look, John knows football. He can do that too. And I know basketball, but I defer to him on pro basketball stuff because he was a main guy for decades doing this. But since I was a young, poor resident at the time, I even got a pair of Michael Jordan shoes. I don't think you know this. I still remember it was this little sporting goods store downtown, but I couldn't afford the fancy ones. I was on the discount aisle, and it was a pair of blue Michael Air Jordan shoes. It was a dark blue and a light blue swoosh. And some people made fun of me for it on the basketball court, but that's all I could afford at the time. And I thought it was still cool because they were Air Jordans.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I kept them for a long time for that reason. Anyways, any other stories to wrap up with Michael there?
I'll tell you one other story that I think most people don't know. And this is a good example of Michael's sort of his confidence and competitive spirit. When the first time he ever made the shot to win the game, we were playing Cleveland out in Richfield Coliseum. It was that was a 6-game playoff, I think. This was the last game. And we had lost to Cleveland every game that year. And they were the top ranked team in the East, I think, and we were lowly ranked. So we took them to the last game. And So we were up by a couple of points, and right in front of us, Craig Hodges was guarding Craig Elo, who is a good player for Cleveland. And Elo went backdoor on Haji, and he dunked the ball. And Hodge felt really bad about this guy beating him to the hoop. And so they came and sat down right in front of me in the bench. I always sat right behind. And I'll never forget that. Michael put his arm around Haji. He said, Haji, Haji, don't worry. He says, I'll take care of it. And Doug Collins called the play, which was essentially everybody get out of the way, throw the ball to Michael. Michael took the ball, jumped up in the air, sunk the hoop. We won the game, and that was the beginning, really, where we became a substantial team. And that was his first shot that he made that ended a series.
Well, awesome. John, thank you very much.
Okay,
The first and last dance doctor. Thanks for joining me here on Pro Football Doc podcast.